Let's see. I think we're live now. Sounds good. Anyway, so yesterday we talked about boldly molding your unprecedented bigger future on your terms, according to your ideals and what you want to see happen. I think I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into that today and discuss the 3 0 factors, if you will. In other words, what are the barriers that you may encounter along the way that are the 0 factors that'll prevent you from, living those results, having those results in your life? And this is a program or a process that I came up with several years back that is still perfect for today, and I use it on a daily basis. And there's 3 major barriers, if you will, 1, 2, and 3, and we come up against them when we're really going for something big, when we're see how when we're trying to create something in our lives that we haven't experienced before, when we're going for a bold molder type goal, where we're it's scary, it's something that we haven't experienced before, and whatever it is for us on an individual level, it doesn't matter what that looks like, but what the challenge is for us individually. And as as we look at this, you can tell where you are on your journey. You can tell where you are on your path to accomplishing those bold molder type goals in your life. And how do you tell that? Well, you can tell that by how you're feeling. And each of these barriers are what I term 0 factors. In other words, they're showstoppers based upon where you are, that until you overcome that, it doesn't matter how great you get at everything else, your results are still going to fall to 0. In other words, you're never going to accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish. And whether you're starting down here on any subject and your goal is to get up here on any subject, there's these 3 major barriers that you're going to have to encounter and move through, right? So there's the barrier of confusion, and there's the barrier of inertia, and then there's the barrier of motivation. And there's 3 distinct different breakthroughs that help carry you over that. The barrier of clarity, or excuse me, the breakthrough of clarity breaks you through the barrier of confusion, right? Of overwhelm, of all of that, when you start to achieve some clarity. Now, that's nothing new. We probably all understand this on an innate level. But what you might not have realized or put together is that you can tell where you are in this process by how you're feeling. So there's distinct emotions and a range of emotions that you come up against when you're coming up closer to each of these types of barriers. And so it's a really great blueprint, if you will, or landmark, if you will, so that you can tell what your present 0 factor is. Because something that is a fairly recent revelation to me is that the 0 factors that we're facing in our pursuits of something changes, it shifts, right? It moves from one to the next, depending on where we are in our journey. Now, obviously, this is in we have specific things based upon who we are, personality-wise, what our specific goals are in our life that are unique to your situation and to what you are looking to have happen. And there's also a general journey here that applies to all of us, no matter what our goal is, whether we're, it doesn't matter what it is, so long as we've never experienced it before and we're looking to create something in our lives, to live something in our lives that we haven't lived before. And so, like, for example, down here, when we're approaching the confusion barrier, we feel emotions like depression, fear, anxiety, anger, frustration, all of those live down here, but they are actually stepping stones to your breakthrough, your clarity breakthrough, so that you can overcome the confusion barrier, the overwhelm barrier, whatever you want to term it, but so that you can get that vision of clarity in terms of summiting the mountain that you want to summit. Make sense? So the other thing that you should recognize is that depression feels worse than fear, and fear feels worse than anger, and anger feels worse than frustration. But they're all stepping stones to the next thing. Now, I don't care what you term these. It's not important what we label these to be. What's important is what's the feeling that you get about this inside when you feel what you're feeling. What does it mean to you? And do you feel a little bit worse or a little bit better? Anyway, the point is, as you start to approach the frustration where you're frustrated because you see a bigger possibility, but you don't know how to get there yet, perhaps. Now you can definitely tell that you're bumping into the barrier of confusion. And until you overcome the barrier of confusion, it's a zero factor for you. You can't progress any further in terms of your emotional state, as well as you can't proceed any further in terms of accomplishing your bold molder goals up here, right? So once you have that clarity breakthrough and all of a sudden it makes some sense, now your emotions shift again, and it shifts to perhaps you still have some lingering doubts, and then it moves into you're hopeful, you may be cautiously optimistic. Now you know that you're coming up against the barrier of inertia, which is, of course, a body at rest tends to stay at rest, and a body in motion tends to stay in motion. So you got to get in the game, and that, of course, requires you to have some confidence to break through that. And then as we get through here further, and this is beyond the scope of what I want to talk about today, but is the motivation barrier. And a lot of us think that motivation is great, and in my opinion, motivation actually sucks. And at a future live video, we'll go through some of these reasons why I believe this, and welcome anybody's feedback. And in the meantime, the ability to recognize this is that sometimes we get caught up, and I can just share with you from my own experience when I decided to shut down my operations, and oh, holy moly, Ray Posner and John Blake. Awesome to hear from you guys and kind of see you guys, at least in the comments. Thanks for being here, I guess. And both of you, if I'm not mistaken, are in Australia, yes? So I guess this is a great time for you guys in Australia. Anyway, awesome to see you guys and reconnect. Anyway, what I was getting at is that when I shut down my major business operations in 2009 in terms of my educational training company and that aspect, it was because I was caught up in the motivation barrier, right? And I started to recognize this. In other words, all the success, all the monetary success, all the, quote unquote recognition, the fame, whatever you want to talk about, I started to see at any rate the fact that I was still feeling empty. In other words, my drive to push forward, to grow bigger and have better things and be more accomplished, my vision had gotten blurred based upon motivation. It was the motivation that was driving me, as opposed to something inside myself that I had to share with the world that I couldn't help but get out of me. So what it required was all the motivation was outside of me. Anyway, what the message of today's broadcast, at least for me, is all about is what's your big, audacious, bold molder vision for that bigger future for yourself that you can boldly mold into that unprecedented bigger future, and where are you in that progress, in that process, so that you can start to identify what is the zero factor that you can help overcome. And since Yep, both John and Ray are in Australia, and hopefully you're still with me, and I haven't bored you to tears yet. If you guys want to chime in with, how this shows up for you, and I mean, maybe it's just me, I don't know, but I find that this is kind of a universal principle. So if you've got anything, I would love to get your feedback. And I know there's a bit of a delay between what you hear from me on the video and then the live comments. So, but if you've got anything other than that, I will wait on it. Otherwise, I will wrap this bad boy up. Doot to do 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 do. Anyway, it looks like there's nothing forthcoming there. That's cool. No problem. It's just awesome to see you guys and reconnect with you. So anyway, at a future date, I'd like to drill down on some of the reasons why I believe motivation sucks and how to perhaps leverage that in your life. And for now, let's call it a wrap, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.